The film opens with a husband and wife calling a monk to check and expel negative energy in their house. When the monk walks to the bathroom, suddenly a woman named Jane comes out of the toilet showing her upper body. The monk is shocked and stunned to see a sight he has never seen before. That morning Jane planned to go on vacation with her friend named Emmy to London. After she was ready, she said goodbye to her parents and asked for money to go there. When she arrived at the airport, she saw her friend sad because her boyfriend couldn't come because he didn't have any money. Seeing that, Jane decided to give the ticket to Emmy's friend so they could go on vacation together, while she decided not to go on vacation. When she was about to go home, Jane saw a man, let's call him Aloy, who was taking his wife, let's call her Desi, to the airport. When Desi entered, Aloy saw Jane walking alone. He decided to offer Jane a ride. At first Jane refused, but who knows what Jane was thinking. When she saw Desi back, she immediately wanted to get in the Aloy car. Then Aloy took Jane to his house. When he was about to bring a drink, Jane opened her top while sunbathing in the yard. Aloy, who saw it, looked surprised and fascinated by the beautiful view. Like what happened at home, Jane looked normal even though Aloy saw her. Then Aloy asked Jane's permission to touch Jane's. Jane allowed it, but a few moments later, Jane said that Desi was on her way home, because Desi saw them getting in the car together. Hearing that, Aloy panicked and took Jane into his house. And a moment after that, Desi really came. Desi asked Aloy, who was the woman he saw earlier. Aloy replied that she was only hitching a ride to the nearest bus stop. But before he finished explaining, Jane came out and still showed her top, and asked permission to leave from there. Desi was furious and Aloy had to accept punches from Desi several times. After that, Jane went to her boyfriend's house, let's call him Colum, but when their Colum's house looked quiet. But when Jane entered the room, she found a woman's underwear. And when she opened the closet, she found Colum with a woman from the EJO application. Jane was annoyed and immediately went to a place to be alone. Disappointed with Colum, Jane tore up the photo of Colum that she kept. After that, Jane was alone and poured out her heart into a recording. After that, Jane continued her journey to who knows where. But in the middle of the road she met two men and immediately asked for a ride. Seeing the faces of the two men who looked evil, Jane pretended to be from abroad, and said she couldn't speak Mandarin. Sure enough, while on the road they talked about taking Jane to a quiet place and forcing Jane to be intimate. Hearing that, Jane immediately prepared herself with a spray to defend herself. And sure enough, thanks to the spray, Jane managed to escape and take the man's car away. Jan took the car and parked it in front of the police station, while she walked and looked for a place to stay. At the inn, Jane recorded her voice again and poured out her heart. But not long after she heard the sound of people making out next to her room. Without hesitation, Jane came there and watched it while relaxing from the balcony of the room. After finishing, the couple, let's call them Susan and Lim, realized that someone was watching them. But instead of getting angry, they became close and acquainted. One day, while walking on the beach, Jen met a writer, let's call her Ian. There they chatted and got to know each other. But when Ian wanted to go home, Jane asked to come with him to her apartment. Ian happily let Jane come with him. At the apartment, they enjoyed dinner together, and after that they chatted while watching television. Because he was bored, Ian suggested playing a question and answer game. Ian asked Jane when she first made out with a man. Jane answered honestly. She did it when she was 16 years old. Their conversation got further, until finally they got carried away and continued making out many times. Since then, Ian and Jane have become closer like a couple. Ian seems to really fall in love with Jane. Even he was very jealous when Jane was approached by an accessories trader, let's call him Han, and gave Jane glasses and clothes for free. He even invited Jane to go to a party. When he got home, Ian borrowed Jane's voice recorder, but when he played it, it turned out that the recording was Jane's voice making out with someone. Ian asked who the man was, but Jane said she forgot who it was. Because of that, they fought. Ian felt jealous of Jane. But Jane apparently didn't like Ian's attitude, especially since they didn't have any status yet. That night, Jane really came to see Han. Jane was really happy with Han, which made Ian even angrier and jealous. Plus when Ian finished going to the toilet, he saw Jane and Han in a room. Ian was furious and decided to go home first. When Jane came home, it turned out that Ian had packed Jane's belongings and asked her to leave. Jane then sat alone, until finally Han saw Jane sitting alone and invited her to come to his house. Jane thought it was free, but apparently Jane had to pay for it by making out until morning. Even so, Jane did not use her feelings and just kept quiet and did not show her best skills. The next morning, Jane returned to Ian's apartment. There Jane said that she could not forget Ian and missed Ian. Apparently Ian also had the same feelings as Jane. But a moment later, Ian asked if she was with Han last night, and was intimate with him. Jane agreed to Ian's question, but she kept thinking about Ian even though she was with Han. Ian was furious, and said no to Jane. Hearing that, Jane was very angry and immediately left there. Jane was alone again on a cliff, and poured out her heart there. Long story short, when Jane wanted to go home, she met Lim again. Lim said he had broken up with Susan because of a third person. Lim also advised Jane, don't let Jane waste the person who loves her. Hearing that, Jane immediately decided to return to Ian and fight for her love. When she arrived there, Jane met Ian's brother. Jane immediately went to Ian's room, but when she got there, Jane saw Ian making out with a woman. Jane also saw a painting of herself displayed in Ian's room. Ian, who realized Jane was there, said they were just friends and didn't do anything. But Jane said it was okay, and asked Ian to finish it first, and she would wait outside. Ian's brother also said that Ian had been looking for Jane for the past few days. He was very depressed because he lost Jane. What Jane just saw was also her initiative to cheer Ian up. A few moments later, Ian finished and met Jane. They made up and decided to date. They immediately went in and made out many times. Until finally the film was over.